It was 12:30.
Cheers,
Let's do
brother.
it. If people walk in, I guess they'll find their way here. Thanks again for being here,
Hey,
Sarah. I
quick.
just want to give you a huge shout out first, and John and Todd. None of this stuff happens without a lot of work in the background. Just to give you guys an orientation of what's happening, we're in Virbella having a live conversation. You see me here, you see Tracy, and we're also live streaming this to YouTube. So when this is done, we'll wrap it up with YouTube and we'll open it back up so that if you guys want to play it back, you can go to the Orion Growth channel and check it out on YouTube. The idea of this place started about a year ago, and we think it might be the first virtual co-working space kind of anywhere. The idea is that it's open for you guys to use, so we don't need to be here. The doors are always open. Bring people in, have conversations, use these rooms, use these screens. We're a partner of Virbella. There's no monetary agreement. It's really just us trying to bring more awareness to DEI and ESG, because by being here and doing this, we're bringing another sort of mode of technology to meetings. And obviously the ESG part, if we can have an immersive meeting, we can have a meaningful discussion. We don't necessarily need to get on an airplane to do it. We're sort of being stewards to the environment. So the entire place is based on activity-based design. Every room has a function. That function is sort of predetermined by, what we're hoping people will do in those rooms. So take a look around after. If you want to tour, if you haven't looked around or you want to know a little bit more about it, I'm happy to do it. But again, shout out to Sarah and Todd and John for doing this. Um, and with that, I'll get with Dave for why fun, different, and unique. Now that we know each other, I'm gonna turn my camera off.
Right on. Let me know when you can see me.
You're on.
Sweet. Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for being here. This is really fun. And I'm really glad that it's the kind of group that can sit around this table. So we are going to be doing a round table today, and I'm glad that everybody can kind of just intermingle with those that are going to be speaking, Stephen and Tracy, which is kind of one of the intentions of this, to make it a little bit more intimate than the typical, at format, even though I am up here kind of talking at. So I just thought I'd just give a little bit of a backdrop to this conversation. Then I'm going to go and sit down. I'll get Stephen to throw his camera up on the screen. I will take mine off, and I'll just let you know what this is all going to be about, and then we'll get into it. So it kind of dawned on me this morning, like it's the 3rd March since the pandemic. It's a pretty eerie time in the world. The backdrop just continues to get more interesting, not less interesting. Speaking personally, I'm sitting here 3 years later after 3 years ago being in the office, flogging the office, and now I'm in PEI in my basement, and we're going to be flogging proximity bias. It's just kind of crazy and funny when I think about how much my world has changed. And I know that a lot of people have their own versions of the same story. And, on this backdrop, we've got a crop of young people that have never worked in an office before that are now being told to go to the office. We've got a crop of even younger people who got handed technology tools to do their jobs, go to school in high school. And they've tasted flexibility in a way no generation preceding them ever has. And they are about to enter the workforce, which is an incredibly interesting dynamic. And then we've got many employers who have done the classic flip-flop from we put work ahead of place to we put place ahead of work. That seems to be, one of the sort of big flip-flops of the moment. So, naturally people from all generations of the workforce are quite confused about how to exist in these times. So we're here to discuss just that, all the confusion. We're going to talk about how to speak up. We're going to talk about how to be heard, and we're going to talk about how to navigate proximity bias. And, we thought about doing this in a bit of a more fun way. The format for today's chat is going to be to lob some real life scenarios to Tracy and Stephen to get their take. But first, we're going to get Stephen and Tracy to introduce themselves. We're then going to spend about 15 minutes riffing on each of these scenarios and leave about 10 minutes for questions. And for anybody who wants to stick around longer, I believe Tracy and Stephen are going to be willing to give a bit more of their time to have some informal chats. And we hope to be able to do the same with you. So yeah, thank you very much for taking the extra effort of coming here today, building an avatar, and taking those extra steps to get into this environment. We really appreciate it. So with that, I'm going to turn my camera off. Stephen, maybe you can turn your camera on.
Trying.
I'll pop a seat. Sorry, I'm struggling to walk here.
There's a couple spots open, Dave. There's a spot at the table.
Yeah, I see. I can just click it.
We can give everybody just another minute. There's a couple more people. Colin, what's up? Come on and sit down. Grab a spot.
Hey, Chris, quick question. As we're sat down, how do you turn to look at each other?
You hit the
Like,
space bar and then move your mouse.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Colin.
Hi, Sandra. Hi, Simon. Chris, welcome.
There we are.
All right. John, you good with your feed, bud? Ramser? I'm assuming that's a yes. Okay, cool. Do it.
Yeah, I'm trying to sit here. There we go. Okay. All right. So we ready to kick it?
Yeah, let's do it, Dave. I'm going to go ahead and start the clock on the 5 minute, and then these guys can intro, and then we'll go from there just to try to keep us on time, okay?
Yeah, sweet. So we will start with Tracy, who has gone through some fun transitions and is a new version of herself today. So Tracy, in 2 minutes or less, can you tell us what, just anything really that comes to you, but you know, we've sort of seen the notion of remote first hybrid. What does that mean to you in Grammarly?
Yeah, sure. So I've been dealing with, well, first of all, during my time at Twitter, I was there for 9 years. I was leading all things kind of remote work and thinking about our hybrid approach. And then in January this year, I joined Grammarly, which is an awesome company that helps people communicate better. So check it out if you don't have it already. I definitely needed it. And so here we have something called remote first hybrid. And what makes it different from a lot of companies is that it's really an intentional approach to how people get together. So rather than having kind of the approach where you're just telling folks, oh, come in 2 days or come in, you have to come in and it's got to be 2 days, but not really saying which days or just kind of leaving folks without guidelines. We do a different approach, which is out of a quarter, there will be a couple of weeks where everybody comes together. And we work on road mapping, planning, special projects, doing training together, and it's all in real life. And we come together and we scheduled those out. I mean, even before I started, they had them scheduled out for 2023 in October, so people can build their lives around it. But they know these certain weeks of the year, each quarter, everyone's coming together. And then the rest of the time, folks can choose to either be completely remote or they can be hybrid. I come into our, what we call hub here in San Francisco, lots of different types of spaces. You can see maybe behind me, I'm in like a phone booth. So it's really about choice, and it's a continuation really of what I was doing at Twitter. At Twitter, we had complete choice. This is now building in more guidelines from feedback that we've received through pulse surveys and things like that. So really that's our approach here at Grammarly and how we get together. Most of the time it's choice. You can be remote, you can be hybrid, and then some of the quarter it's we all get together and do the things like relationship building and solving difficult problems together in real life. So yeah, that's my world.
Sweet, thank you. And Stephen, same, 2 minutes or less. Can you tell us about Speak Up Culture, which is the subject of your new book, and why it was so important to you to publish something on it?
Sure. So, I mean, what's fun for me here, Dave, is you and I go back a number of years, and I'm sort of accessory to this conversation on where we work from and future of work. I predominantly care about leadership and culture and the behaviors of leaders and how it affects culture. And a big part of this conversation of where we work is what is our culture like, and how does our culture impact how we work, for better or for worse. And so I'm sort of coming from a bit of a different angle, but I think it's all connected and really amplified in this conversation. So fun for me to be here with you all. So, I mean, I have a couple beliefs. So one, I believe people want flexibility and choice. I believe people want to be treated with respect and as the human beings that they are. And I think people want to be compensated fairly. And so that's sort of drivers that I will bring into this conversation. I've worked for the past, so my first couple of jobs were in corporate, and then I left corporate and joined Simon Sinek's team, if anyone's familiar with Simon and his work, and have been part of Simon's team for about 11 and a half years now. And that team has been remote first since I've joined. And we would, have offsites once a year with a focus on building relationship. A big part of our business was traveling for work, because we do keynotes and workshops on leadership and culture, and we would try to come together and meet up as often as we could. But I've been part of a remote first team even before it was a thing. So that's been neat. And then, a couple of things really drove my desire to write a book. I've been on sort of the speaker circuit for close to a decade now, and I have often been asked, when are you going to write your book? And my answer was always, if and when I come across something worth writing about, because there are plenty of keynote speakers who write books, because that's what keynote speakers do. That's the definition of a shitty book, pardon my French. And so I didn't want to make one of those. I wanted to make something that was actually of value. And I came across something that I think is. So coming in the fall is Speak Up Culture. When leaders truly listen, people step up. And it's born from a couple of things. One, I grew up with a stutter, so I know what it feels like to be voiceless. I married a speech pathologist. Good choice. More so for my kids than me. And I've also been parts, as maybe you have as well, teams and cultures and organizations where there is a thriving Speak Up culture, where people are encouraged and rewarded for sharing their ideas, concerns, disagreements, and mistakes, believing it will lead to improvements, not punishments. Tracy, maybe you know a couple things about that. I have also been parts of teams and organizations where, when you share your ideas, concerns, disagreements, and mistakes, you're punished or you're made to be the problem. And that's really unhealthy and more likely to be led by a tyrant or narcissistic leader or leaders. And so I want more of the former and not the latter. I want my kids and your kids work in organizations where people are encouraged and rewarded for bringing their best and sharing what they think and feel.
Kick ass, dude. Well, I'm pumped to get into it, and I think it's cool. It's funny, I met both of you on LinkedIn. I haven't met Tracy IRL yet. I can't wait. But Steven, even though we're in the same city, know a lot of the same people, we actually met on the internet, which is cool. And I think there's a lot of internet serendipity that's going to force multiply in-person serendipity. So I'm going to take you guys through a couple of scenarios. You've seen them, but the one sort of catch to that is someone sent me an interesting text this morning, and I'm going to make that the third scenario. So just to keep everybody engaged, I'm gonna bring a real life text in for the third one. But we'll kick off with Tracy, who I'll zoom over and look at now, which is fun. So here's the first scenario. So we'll get Tracy to kind of go through it. We'll get then Steven's point of view, and then if there's time permitting within the 15 minutes, we can, let's just do it back and forth. But we're gonna go for about 15 minutes with each of these. So okay, so here's the new one. I'm new to the workforce, and I'm unsure how much leverage I have to request a flexible work arrangement. My parents are telling me to take the job and to be the first one in and the last one out of the office, but I think flexibility is more important than money to my generation. It feels daunting to work for a big company. I need help. Help me.
Mm-hmm. So this is a scenario where they've already interviewed and they're already at the company and they're deciding the approach that they want to take in terms of their work flexibility. Is that right, Dave? Or where are they at in the process?
I think that we're sort of saying that they're shortlisted on a job. They're going to take it. They're getting a lot of pressure, to take the job, as parents would say, right? Like, it doesn't matter where you start. Just take the job, be the first one in, be the last one out. Don't worry about what, your needs are. The point of early days of working is to slog it out, and that's how you kind of get to the top. So I think that they're basically confused about the prevailing notion that we've all received growing up, and the one that many of us followed.
Right.
And how do they actually express their true feelings here, even in a world where it's supposed to be,
First of all, they need to say to their parents, "Okay, boomer," I think, because that feels like a really old-fashioned, approach to raising your profile in the office. It should be more about the output and the work that you do, as opposed to, the hours that you log and who you get in the elevator with. For me, if I look at the companies that I've worked for, the way that you progress in the office or in the role that you're in is not necessarily actually through the kind of turning up and being there 8 hours a day. But for me, it's around maybe joining things like affinity groups and BRGs, and really understanding the leadership as well and the things that are important to them. Knowing the folks that lead your particular team. We had plenty of people here at Grammarly and also at Twitter who were remote leaders, and that's how bringing in a remote culture and a kind of a hybrid approach is only going to be successful if the leadership model it. So hopefully going into this role, the person would know enough about the company through the interview process to understand what the culture is like, so that they were able to make that kind of active decision as they were going through that process, like, is this the right company for me? Hopefully it would be pretty obvious as they are, talking to the recruiter, then talking to peers they might be working with, and leadership. They would actively ask about the culture and say, like, what is the expectation? Is there an element of flexibility here? I know since the pandemic, the world has changed a lot, and it's not so much about just being present and being there in a physical space, but it's about where I can do my very best work, and that's the sort of person that I am. And I want to do my best work for this company, but that's being able to have choice and flexibility. And I think folks these days, as they go into their first job and as they go into the world of work, they have a lot more ability to be able to set that. But then it's also down to the person to do their research about the company and see if it's going to be an uphill struggle, because I think it is a fact of life that as you progress through and you become more senior and you have a more leadership position, then you have more of an ability to help shift that culture as well, to help be in the room when those conversations are happening. I was able at Twitter to be part of the team even before the pandemic. And it's interesting what Stephen was saying. Even before the pandemic, we were moving towards a lot more remote work and a lot more hybrid approach as well, so that we could capture as many different types of people all around the world, regardless of where they were. We just wanted the people who were the best at what they did. And I remember presenting to our board and then basically laughing at us and saying, that sounds ridiculous. How will you keep an eye on everyone? Like, how will this work? And we knew at the time that that was the way the world would be going. And then the pandemic happened and it set us up for that. But going back to your original question, I think for me, that's something that you have to kind of really suss out before you get into the company. But also when you start, just having those healthy behaviors and trying to set up people's expectations around how you work best as well, so you don't fall into those kind of pre-pandemic habits or the way we used to work pre-pandemic. So I know that's a little bit all over the place, but hopefully that kind of got us started.
No, super helpful. Stephen, you kind of ready to jump in?
Oh, I'll jump. I really agree with Tracy in terms of, while this individual's parents are well-meaning, this isn't an episode of Seinfeld where George Costanza parks his car in the lot so that he's there early and they're late, regardless of the condition of the vehicle. And if you're not familiar with that Seinfeld episode, highly recommend. So parents well-intending, but no. The thing that I think is interesting, especially within a large organization, is the variability of culture. This is why I'm also very hesitant to label an organization. Like I'm often asked, who has a great culture, who has a great speak up culture? And I'm very hesitant to label organizations because organizations change based on their leaders. As an example, Microsoft under Bill Gates, dweeby, but quite infinite-minded and inspiring. Microsoft under Steve Ballmer, highly competitive, highly finite-minded, erratic. And now Microsoft under Satya Nadella, he's trying to bring the soul back to Microsoft. He talks about care and human spirit and coaching and modeling behavior. I'm liking what I'm hearing and seeing out of Microsoft now. However, does that mean that every single manager and leader at Microsoft is perfect and amazing? Of course not. There is no such thing ever. And no leader or manager is perfect for all people, just as we are not for all people. Our values matter. And so I think for this one individual, I would encourage them to try to find a community, try to find, I think, Tracy, as you were recommending as well, seek out those groups of like-minded people such that you can find a leader that values flexibility, that values output and productivity and how you show up over how much you show up and where you show up. And especially within the context of a large organization, find the pockets, or hopefully multiple pockets, where you can be you, where you can show up and be flex and still be rewarded and still be promoted and all the things that should be, and not just pay your dues with time in a physical space. So that's what I would say, is really figure out what are your values and then find people who share in those values, not just through what they say, but especially how they behave.
Right on. Okay, well, we've got some good time. I wanna actually just riff on a follow-up that's not related specifically to this, but that has gotten me thinking. Chris and I just got back from a trip to Boston for Simon Davis's event, Purposeful Intent. Simon's here in the room, so plug for Simon and his great event. Along the way, we actually stopped in Maine and we interviewed Chris's nephew, who was a college student, and it was really interesting. And I just want to kind of cut to the chase for time. So basically what he said to us is that flexibility got unlocked for him in high school through technology tools being handed to him to do his job, school. And he couldn't get over how immensely valuable the flexibility was. He was able to shorten his working day productivity-wise by not wasting time at the quote office, and prioritize his mental and physical well-being while being able to get those hours back. And I kind of asked him, I said, I'm shocked. I thought you would have said, you had a really bad time mentally speaking because you were isolated. And he said, oh, that's the thing, but I feel like I can navigate that and I'll figure it out. And flexibility is something I'm never willing to give up. So we have a generation that's coming in that seems to really value flexibility and have experienced it at a younger age than anybody. But right now, they're living in the blissful utopia of college campus life, where they can basically work remotely and then get there in person from their friends on campus. So to give them this flexibility as they move into this next phase, where it's going to be harder to get that socialization, how do we help them? Because what we're actually seeing from young people who are given the autonomy is that a lot of them don't want to go to the office, and some of their leaders are worried these people are isolated and they seem to not really get the damage that they're doing to themselves. So I don't have a specific question, but how do you respond to that?
I'd say, Dave, I think part of the problem is when you bring folks together, when you ask them to come into an office or gather together wherever, they've got to get the best out of that time, right? It has to be something that you can't replicate virtually, or it's a different type of experience. And I think the problem at the moment is companies are asking people to come together, but they're not creating a reason or a great experience when they actually do come together. And they're not looking at their spaces and thinking about, the 2 days a week we ask them to come in, or the 2 weeks a quarter we ask them to come in. What is it that we're trying to do, and what is the type of environment that we are trying to create, and how do we need to flex that? Because if I think about myself or a lot of people that I know, I'm a very sort of social type A. I love to come in and see people, whether that's in the office or whether that's an offsite somewhere, or whether we're doing a team building thing, doesn't matter. But just, I need to know that the reason we're coming together, the goal, it needs to feel like it's very valuable time. But for me, it's a real kind of balance of, I have my home time to do some things. I like to come into the what we call the hub here. It's an office to do other things. There's definite people interaction things that I prefer to do in real life. But then I also talk to my team about how they prefer to work. And, we have an understanding of kind of what works best for everyone. And then, we're very intentional about how we come together and what we achieve in person. So I think the problem is, well, it's not a problem. I think this is the challenge is we have gone through a pandemic now where, you know, the genie's out of the box. We all know that working from home is completely possible. It's not perfect in a lot of respects, but many folks, when you look at the stats, when you look at what Nick Bloom's put on LinkedIn, the majority of folks like that hybrid approach, which just says to me that the hub and office spaces are lagging, and there are things we need to do, and how we plan that time we're together in a much more intentional way that makes people feel like, yeah, it was worth leaving my house. Because that's the thing now. It's like we have to make a case for people leaving their house, and if they're coming somewhere to bring folks together that isn't their home, they got to commute or they got to pay for a train ticket, then it's got to be worth their while when they do come together. So, but I do think when we do provide that worth, it for a lot of people, it creates good balance, because there is the other side of the equation that people don't always want their home to be their everything. They don't want it to be like, oh, this is where I work all the time. I want some separation between my home life and my work life. You know, I want to leave the house. I was stuck here for 2 years in the pandemic. So I think it's just, you know, we really need to think about that experience when everyone comes together and making it valuable.
Right on. Okay, Stephen, in about 2.5 minutes, hit us with your thoughts on this.
Well, I love what Tracy said in terms of, I mean, this is like an economic question from the perspective of where are people choosing to work, and are you making the office so compelling that people make that choice versus a co-working space versus home versus Portugal. Like, I think it's a really interesting perspective of, you know, the competitive landscape of make it worth it to come in because of the relationships, because of the shared interest groups. I think you know, Dave, I'm even reflecting on my own experience of, you know, I love this notion of like, you know, blissful college where, you know, you can walk outside and your friends are a block away and the bar is this away and the intramural sports, and like you go from, you know, this blissful, you know, you aren't even aware of how good it is until you graduate, you get a job and you're like, where are all my friends? And so what I did at that point is I sought out the shared interest groups, whether they were at work or outside of work. I volunteered for an organization that represented my values. And that's where I met a lot of friends. And so I think a competitive advantage for any organization is how can you bring together shared interest groups around, whether it's hacky sack or DEI or, you know, something, you know, something you know, as ridiculous and fun as hacky sack, and something as meaningful as climate crisis, and bring people together. I think it's a competitive advantage for our work to find shared interest groups where we can solve and connect on meaningful things, not just within the bounds of the scope of our work, but in the bounds of our scope of what it means to be human and what it means to be part of community.
That was good, dude. And you did it in literally 10 seconds less than what I asked you to do.
Oh, I know. I know. And now we've wasted it. Look at that.
Okay, so we're gonna keep moving up the age bracket. So the next scenario, I've been in the labor force for 10 plus years. I have kids that need me. I have a partner that needs my help with our responsibilities, car, house, kids, pets, aging parents, all the real life problems. COVID made it more possible for me to be selfish in a ha-ha sense, because I'm taking better care of my well-being and prioritizing my family. And now I'm losing it because of mandates. I don't want to be a jerk, and I don't want to build, and I do want to help build the culture of my organization. But how do I meet my needs and my family's needs beyond the typical patronizing of advice of find another job? So, Tracy, you want to go first?
No, I'm gonna let Stephen tell you this one first.
Well, I mean, Dave, it's so good because in many respects, this is where I think both you and I are at in stage of life. So I think, you know, I'm a real big fan. I think it's Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Love the one you're with. So I think the advice of find another job is not great advice and not particularly empathetic advice. I think what the first thing I would do is can you go on the offensive to have a conversation with leaders, and to rehearse this and get coaching and role play it out and whatever, to say, here's my situation. And I'm a complex being with complex needs as it relates to being a parent, as it relates to being in the sandwich generation of having to both care for kids and care for aging parents. You will get less out of me as a human being if I have to work from the office. Might I be able to be an example for myself and other employees, and find a flexible hybrid way of working that works for all? Because if not, I'm going to have to look for another arrangement. So I'm coming to you first on the offensive to see if we might be able to broker something that's a win for all.
Dig it. I
I
dig
think
it.
that's great advice. And also, I think, you know, if you've got a track record where you've really performed in a hybrid or remote setting, and you're able to sort of sit down with your manager and your leader and say, look, I've been able to do this great work in this setting. It's actually made me better at my job than I was when I was in a different setting. Like, I think that's a difficult one to argue with. And I think it's like anything, there's always going to be, especially if you're putting down a mandate, there's always going to be exceptions. There's always going to be folks that need to just, you know, work in a slightly different way. And hopefully this is not unique. This is something that I'm sure a lot of companies are having to deal with at the moment. Also, just if there's an ability to almost be, you know, hey, I know that you are maybe worried about productivity, worried about being able to look at how much work am I doing, or like, what does my output look like? Is there a way that I could be a pilot case and work with like the people analytics team within the company to look at how I'm achieving my OKRs and goals and measuring my performance? Because I think a lot of it is managers who maybe aren't as great at managing when somebody's not under their nose and they're not seeing them every day. But we all know it should be more output based. Is there a way that you could be a test case, but also be able to provide that data and metrics and work with the company to really show the value of, you know, how the working from home aspect is actually making you better at your job?
Yeah,
Love
dig
that.
it. So you're making me think of a follow-up, which is around there's been a lot of chatter about how people that are tenured in their careers need to pay it forward. And paying it forward means being in the office for all the osmosis. And so, you know, Stephen and Tracy, we're kind of all in a similar camp in the sense that we have young children. I tend to roll my eyes when I sort of hear all this osmosis stuff. And I ask in my own head, like, how can the organization be more helpful to create intentional touch points for us to be able to transfer our knowledge? So I don't know what you guys think about that, but that's the thing that I think is the risk for all of us at this stage in our careers, is that we're worried about being passed over for the people that are willing to be there for the osmosis. So how do we help each other help leadership on this issue?
I'll just personally call bullshit on osmosis, because osmosis can happen virtually at scale. So this notion of, you know, like, one of the things we miss is serendipity, you know, but we can have serendipity in this environment. You know, I can walk down the hall, bump into someone that I recognize their name, or they have a cool Canadian sweater on like me, and we strike a conversation. That's serendipity in a virtual space. So I think one of the things we might miss is serendipity, but osmosis and knowledge share and transfer, that is not an activity that must happen in person. I think we can very successfully, I would argue potentially more successfully, and at scale, do that in a virtual setting. So I roll my eyes with you, Cairns.
Okay. Tracy, thoughts?
Did we lose Tracy?
I'm not sure. She's frozen.
And on mute.
Okay. Well, we can keep going. I mean, we do, while if Tracy's sort of struggling to come in, I mean, I almost feel like I could just take a second here. Is anyone want to put their hand up and ask any question or make a comment about anything that we've got so far? Before I move to the next round, we've got about 8 or 9 minutes.
Something in the chat here that I can do. Brent, you want to ask your question about unequal osmosis? Your
Sure,
mic
I think
might
it
not.
follows on. It follows on to a point just made with regards to osmosis can happen virtually. There's been a number of groups that have indicated they prefer to be virtual because they miss the microaggressions that happen in an office. And so I guess it's just that planned leading, I guess, that you were talking to, or that osmosis can happen anywhere.
Totally.
But I think to play devil's advocate, this is Simon Davis. And the big thing we've seen, right, is none of this stuff is binary. It's not either or. It's and. It's what works best. And I think people pen me as being anti-office, and I'm very much not. I think there's a need to collaborate, communicate. I think there's a need to have space where there are capabilities, whether that be people, equipment, etc. You need to bring together. I saw a really interesting presentation a couple of weeks ago in New York from Adobe. And they actually looked at the benefits and the speed to code of developers that did their onboarding in person as opposed to virtual. And it was significant enhancements. They were like 35% faster. So I think that's the big picture, right? Is we don't need to answer all the questions as a yes or a no, because oftentimes the middle ground is where we want to be.
Totally.
Dig it.
Yeah.
So I'm texting with Tracy right now. She is logging out and logging back in.
Cool.
I want to sort of wait for her for this final scenario.
Dave, that's the downside of the office. You can't fake freeze when you're in the office.
I will take a second just to let you guys know that we intentionally designed a water cooler room in the virtual office. So when you're done here, if you want to meet there, we can have a not so serendipitous conversation in the water cooler room in the metaverse that doesn't exist.
I had a comment to make it, Sandra. Just when we're talking about serendipity and just kind of the sort of interaction, the osmosis, the learning, kind of all of that stuff. In the last probably week or so, I've been thinking a little bit about, how organizations, or whether or not organizations just allow for this space for people to come together, where it's kind of more of a hands-off, it's not intentional learning. And again, I'm thinking about past experiences because I too, Stephen had worked at an organization that was doing hybrid since the early 2000s. So when I joined back in 2015, they were 80% mobile, people coming in the office, like maybe mostly for events once a quarter. So, quarterly meetings, that kind of thing. And then it was just a free for all. You come in whenever you wanted. There was no mandate. But it was interesting how my first day of work, and I tell this story often, is my first day, my boss was in Vancouver. My team was scattered across Canada, and there was nobody there for me. And I was told that, for the first month or so that I should make the effort to be in the office every day for learning, whatever. And so I show up day one and there's nobody there. And my boss is like 3 hours behind because she's on Pacific time and I'm in Toronto. So it's like, okay, that's not going to go. I did it for like 3 days and I'm like, screw this. I'm just going to work remotely. Like, I'm just going to work from home. There's no point coming down into the city. And so it kind of gets me thinking about, even like on the days that I did go in the office, you rarely saw like leaders and managers there. And so it's kind of like, you're hiring new people in. The new people are the people that basically need to learn from the more seasoned people in the organization, but still this belief that you need to be in the office to learn. And it's bizarre because it's like, well, you could do like virtual partners or, things like that, where people can kind of introduce you to other people in the organization when you're working virtually. That it's not about, the osmosis isn't about being physically present in an office, because most of the time the people that you need to interact with aren't there, or they don't have time to interact with you. At least that's been my experience, right? So it's kind of like, how much of the space or the real estate has been a crutch for businesses to kind of give people an opportunity to go in and have those serendipitous conversations and kind of whatever it is that we're calling it, where it's more of a hands-off versus thinking about intentionally teaching and allowing people to learn. And I think about this from the perspective of the fact that, you know, one of the top 3 reasons people quit their jobs is because they don't have, you know, great learning opportunities or development opportunities. And you're like, well, how is that? If that's what they're saying is the need for being in an office, but yet it's one of the top 3 reasons that people leave, there's a disconnect there in some way, right?
He's back.
Totally.
Tracy is back.
Oh my goodness, I don't know what happened there, but I'm back. Sorry about that.
Nice. No, it's okay. It's all part of the experience. And it opened up the door for people to chat a little bit, which was great, but we're sorry that you missed it.
It's all recorded.
Yeah. So Tracy, are you going to try and throw your camera back up? I waited for you for this text that I received.
Oh, I was advised not to, because that might have been part of the problem. So I was advised not to put my camera back on at the moment.
Great. Okay, no worries. Well, so Chris, before I jump into this last one, how much time do you think we got left to sort of do this conversation and ensure people have time to chit chat?
Well, we have 20 minutes left on the hour from 12:30 to 1:30 Eastern. So with 20 minutes left, if we want to take 10 and then 10 for conversation Q&A, and then maybe that'd be good.
Okay, great. So this is a prolific text with very little context that I'm about to drop on you guys. And I kind of intentionally want to leave it in that format to allow you to ascribe your own meaning, if that's okay. But we can unravel the context as we go. Does that sound good?
Go for it.
Okay. Text received this morning. We rent this place and what we say goes. Isn't the kind of business forward thinking you'd expect from someone being paid $500K plus per year. Gus.
Sorry, can you share that again? I didn't track.
Okay. This is quotations. We rent this place and what we say goes. Isn't the kind of business forward thinking you'd expect from someone being paid $500,000 or more per year. The idea being there's a sentiment amongst the working population that the leaders that are up there making quite a bit of money are not really doing much still 3 years later to be forward thinking. So it's like we could go in a million directions with this, but you've got a whole bunch of people going to the office that are thinking these sniping thoughts of their leaders. And like, how do we unravel and unpack all the stuff that is not being said, basically, after a 3-year period of structural change in our entire lives, and we're now being put back in the box, so to speak?
Well, I think one of the things, and you may have talked about it while I was gone, I mean, what's rough for people to push back on at the moment, or even like ask for some balance and some choice, because I am in the balance and choice camp, as opposed to like, oh, everything should be completely remote. It is also like the job situation right now and all the layoffs and everything that's been happening. And so I think people are thinking a lot of these things and wanting more flexibility. But not only have we seen, I think there's a lot of, whenever one company does a bunch of layoffs, the rest of them that were maybe thinking about it suddenly do all theirs as well. And now there's sort of some of the leadership are thinking, well, the power's with us now, and because we've done these layoffs, like you might feel more insecure about your job, or you might be looking for a job where you feel like you don't have as much choice about the type of environment. And so I think there is an element of that which is making it hard for folks to maybe say how they feel and push back against leadership a bit. And maybe there's a little bit of leadership feeling like that this was out of their control during the pandemic itself, because of the nature of the pandemic. We all had to work from home. We had to, just carry on the business in the best way that we could, and everyone had to work from home. And then slightly after, when offices and when we started like being able to go back into spaces together, there was still the feeling that, well, it's more in the employee's power because they're saying that, well, this worked during the pandemic and so we should still have choice and all of this. And now there's been like almost a bit of a weird shift, whether I think it's temporary, but a weird shift because of like the economic conditions and the job markets, and people who are in really good jobs suddenly finding, that, a whole load of software engineers are being laid off, or big teams are being laid off. And so I think that that's maybe this doesn't really totally answer your question, sorry Dave, but like it maybe is preventing people really being able to push back for what they want in some ways, which is a bit of a shame.
Not sure if we lost Dave or not.
Yeah, Dave, can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
There you are.
I was on mute. I said, no, Tracy, that was a great answer. And it was really kind of meant to elicit whatever response came to the person responding. So no worries.
Yeah.
And so Stephen, I just wanted to reframe it for you just for these last 5 minutes. There's been a lot of talk about artificial intelligence disrupting middle management, sort of as we move away from, I guess, measuring productivity to needing to, I don't know, measure. I don't even know what we really need from leaders as things may or may not start to shift. There's a lot of statistics that were thrown around about what AI will do to disrupt middle management. So I guess I'm just trying to lean on you for what kind of empathy do we need to be now leading with that's going to make an employee not feel this kind of resentment towards somebody who's basically telling them to get back in the office because they pay for it.
Yeah, so there's two questions there. One is sort of the first question, the thing you just left off with. The other is the disruptive impact of AI, for better or for worse, of which I don't pretend to be an expert on that, but I have a couple of thoughts. First and foremost, I think, again, flexibility is a competitive advantage. When push comes to shove, do you want to go work for a leader and set of leaders in an organization that is understanding and willing to flex, or do you want to go work in a fraternity environment where we do this because this is what was done to us? Like, that's bullshit and that's antiquated. And so those leaders and organizations can carry on and press on, and I think they will lose out on talent. So proceed as you wish, or embrace the future, and know that what got us here won't get us there, and embrace some forward and progressive thinking in terms of, as Tracy said earlier, your talent pool is far bigger when people don't have to work in Tallahassee. They can work from wherever. So that's on that first piece. In terms of AI disrupting middle management, I don't think, we could have a potentially empathetic conversation with an AI chatbot. That's kind of creepy. I think, Dave, you know this better, but we've had interesting conversations on some of the new creations with AI as it relates to automating note taking, meeting scheduling. Like, there's certain stuff that I think AI can take off the plate and make really productive. I think, though, that as it relates to the science and art of leading and managing people, that's a human endeavor. I don't think AI, while AI can remind us that we have a performance review and, go through our email to pull some, highlighted projects that we did over the last quarter or whatever, we still need to show up as human beings. So I think AI can make things more efficient. I don't think AI is going to necessarily make things more human. I think that's up to us.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's really just exposing the fact that we need to, like, a lot of managers are managing productivity and not necessarily managing people as much as they should be. And so I think it's an opportunity, actually. It's just one that I think a lot of middle management is getting exposed for. And I think that that's why that comment comes up of, like, must be nice to make 500K and not really be business forward in your thinking, or future forward in your thinking. So I think that that's the area that is an opportunity, but is currently an area of, I guess, resentment for a lot more people out there than maybe vocalizing it. And the times are different now, which is, I think, the thing that makes it more dynamic. So I think with that, I mean, it's probably just a good opportunity to kick it over to people to just ask Tracy and Stephen anything, or just have an open discussion with the next 10 minutes of this session.
Hey, David, it's Simon. I'd like to
Simon's got his hand up there.
There we go, Tracy. So actually, just in response to what Stephen was talking about, those of you who know me know that a lot of my frame of reference is my 6-year-old, who is going to be interviewing Tracy about the future of work at some point in the future.
Excited.
I'm excited for it as well. She is too. She's got some tough questions. But I posted this morning, and I think it's really pertinent, right? I was talking to Cora about Siri today in AI, and she said, Siri knows all the ice cream flavors, but she can't tell you how they taste. Such wisdom from a 6-year-old. AI will change us forever from an efficiency standpoint, so be the one that can tell you what ice cream tastes like and how it makes you feel, right? People who use AI will beat people that don't, because it's purely an efficiency play. We're a long, long way away from it being sentient and it being feeling, and, to your point, Stephen, being able to talk to a chatbot that makes us feel a certain way, because it doesn't have that capability, right?
One of the things I would add there, Simon, and obviously I have to do a plug because I'm here and it'd be remiss of me not to. We are going to be, and we all see ourselves doing a lot more asynchronous work as we are now in this more hybrid remote situation that a lot of us find ourselves in. And so, when I think about AI, here I am at Grammarly, and Grammarly is trying to help people communicate. And it's not just about, oh, you missed a comma, but it's also helping you get your message across more clearly, more and help with your tone, so it can tell you sound confident, or maybe you sound a bit like combative there. And I think that is the areas that are really helpful to us as we continue to communicate, but we don't do as much in person. So have to give a shout out for Grammarly. There's a free version, everyone, so give it a go.
Love it.
I think the other thing, Simon, that comes to mind with this is, you can ask an AI, what's your favorite wine, or what's your favorite ice cream flavor? And it will dig from all the available information to say, well, Wines of America suggests this Pinot Noir. And it's like, cool, how does it taste? It's with hints of vanilla, but it's data mining. It's not coming from firsthand experience.
Absolutely.
So
I wish you could see the smile on my face right now, Stephen.
I look forward to meeting your daughter too. She might get along with my 6-year-old.
Let's do it.
Who else has got thoughts?
Oh, so many.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's got their hand up over there. Free to speak.
Janine?
Hey, yes. So my situation is kind of between the first two situations. So, I have been in the workforce for a while, and I have worked in offices for quite a number of years. I left my most recent full-time role about a month ago because it was just not a good environment for me. The company really wanted me to stay, but I was just not able to function in that job. I'm sure many of you have been there before. Anyways, so I'm job searching now while I'm also developing my freelancing and consulting business and working on some things that are more exciting and building my own entrepreneur community. Obviously, all of these other side projects would be easier to do if I were remote, but there's nothing really stopping me from being able to go to an office. So as I apply to jobs, I actually do kind of mentally think about, the ones that say on site are going to be lower hanging fruit, and the ones that say remote are going to be more competitive. So because I'm not really interested in the jobs that an algorithm would immediately match my resume to, I also feel like I need to keep my options open. And I do believe that if I try to negotiate too hard on the work arrangement in certain cases during the interview process, then I might lose an opportunity if they are really rigid in their thinking. So I don't know if there's a specific question here, but that's just sort of where I'm coming from right now.
I think, Janine, it's choices and trade-offs. Like you need to figure out for yourself what you're willing to say yes to, what you're willing to say no to, and see who you come across and see how flexible and adaptable and open they are as well. But there's an awareness from your standpoint that you have, that you are willing to work on site, whereas some people might not be. So, your pool of availability might potentially be larger. But I think, for you to figure out, all right, here are my trade-offs, or here are my non-negotiables, and here are my negotiables. Just as when we go and look for a life partner, we can take out a sheet of paper and write down, here are the things that I want, here are the things that and approach it too, because the parallels between searching for work and searching for a life mate are kind of the same. So not sure if that helps, but just to create some awareness around what are things that you aren't willing to trade versus things that you are.
Yeah,
I
I
think-
need to be blunt. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go. No, you go. This is your moment.
Oh, I was just gonna say that it's my longevity at an on-site situation is likely to be more limited. That it's harder for me to imagine I would actively desire stay if flexibility could not be negotiated later. That may cut my tenure short there. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I completely agree with Stephen, and I think when you look at how it is that you prefer working, it's going to become like one of those principles that is just in your mind as you evaluate opportunities, just along with, what's the leadership like? Is the work exciting? Do I feel like it's somewhere I can grow? Like, what is the flexibility, and does it align with how I want to approach life? And I think that's how you have to think about it. And, speaking from my experience, last year I went from a situation where it was very flexible, choice-led, work in the way that best suits how you do your, most effective work, to absolutely rigid. No, everyone has to be in, everyone is in the same box, everyone has to be in every single day, and blah, blah. And that to me was just one piece of other values and principles that I thought about when I evaluated the new leadership and made my decision to resign, basically. So I think this just becomes like our list of non-negotiable prerequisites as we look at a situation. But I guess we also just go into it our eyes open, knowing that, I mean, for me, it meant being out of work for 2 months and having to find another job. Luckily to find this great job, but you just go in it and know that there's going to be those trade-offs, right?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Janine. It's just really great just to hear the thought process of someone that's looking for a job right now. And I mean, I'm not going to take the microphone on it, but I'm in a career flux state. So no one's necessarily pushing me out the door, but I kind of want to figure it out. So I can resonate with a lot of the feelings that you're having right now.
Hey, Janine, this is Simon Davis. We don't know each other, but please reach out. I'd love to have a chat with you. There's a lot of really interesting things in my atmosphere right now, so there might be something of interest to what you're talking about.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I will reach out.
Awesome.
Great. I think we can kind of wrap then on this note. I mean, I think this went pretty good for the first time in the metaverse. I don't know how everybody feels.
I think so too. How do we do, guys? All right, cool. Well, so here's the deal, right? So Stephen, if you don't mind killing your camera, I'm gonna put mine on again. Maybe.
I will kill. Yes.
All right, cool. Thanks.
And as Chris is going out, Tracy, Stephen, thank you so much for giving your time and your perspective. We really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah,
this was great. Thank you so much, guys. So just a couple of minutes left, right? So we Stephen and Tracy have both agreed to hang out for about 15 more minutes. So I would much rather allow for a little bit of opportunity for you guys to bump into each other out there. Take a second and look around out here. Stephen's book is on the wall on the way out. You can click on the actual image itself. Pre-sale, I think, is in October. So take a look at that. Again, anyone with an O on their badge, on their shirt, probably has some answers to any questions that you have. I'm gonna hop outside. Dave and I will probably announce our next Tuesday speaker, or 2 Tuesdays away speaker, in the form that you filled out in the communication form. So you should have gotten an email today. If there's any questions about anything, you know how to find us. Just hit us on LinkedIn. Yeah, but beyond that, guys, if there's any questions about anything, and again, Sarah's in the back of the room cheering. Sarah's championing Virbella. Go around, look at the campus, get out of co-working, go to the fire pit, go check that out, take a boat out, go play, go to the speakeasy, cut a rug, go check out this place a little bit more.